Please.
Don't do it.
Please. Don't
Okay,
do it.
go to it, guys. Let's go. Remember, judge is ready, timer ready when you get up, and then Mrs. Powers will start timing.
Judge ready? Timer? Good afternoon. My partners Nicole Menendez, Isabel Horowitz, and I, Jason Allison, are for the resolution the United States federal government should be prohibited from collecting surveillance data on citizens without a warrant. Quote, if you're a grown-up and you've been using the internet for maybe close to 20 years, Google alone has the equivalent of about 3 million pages of information on you, end quote. Observation 1, definitions. Citizen, a person who legally belongs to a country and has the rights and protection of that country. Prohibit, formally forbid by law, rule, or other authority. Collect, to gather, assemble, to accumulate. U.S. federal government, the national government of the United States of America. The federal government is composed of 3 distinct branches, legislative, executive, and judicial, whose powers are vested by the U.S. Constitution. Surveillance data, information on individuals pertaining to participation in organizations, groups, meetings, or assemblies, where there are no reasonable grounds to suspect involvement or participation in criminal activity by any person. Warrant, a document issued by a legal or government official authorizing the police or some other body to make an arrest, search premises, or carry out some other action relating to the administration of justice. Observation 2, harms. Harm A, it's unconstitutional. Quote, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized, end quote. The government does ignore this law. According to the information disclosed by Senator Ron Wyden in January of 2021, quote, analysts of the Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA, have purchased databases of U.S. smartphone location data without warrants, end quote. The Constitution explicitly states that the government is not to invade a U.S. citizen's privacy without a warrant. This law is being blatantly ignored. Harm B. Governments with an unrestrained and unlimited supply of information are a very real threat and will inevitably manipulate and oppress citizens. Quote, history has shown that powerful secret surveillance tools will almost certainly be abused for political ends, end quote. An example of that is, quote, totalitarian regimes in Germany make widespread use of mass surveillance in order to dominate freedom and carry out horrific crimes, end quote. The U.S. government is currently operating with the same meager restrictions that were in place for Nazi Germany. History and common sense reminds us of the grave dangers and risks in the current situation. Harm C. Even when not manipulated, surveillance negatively affects the lives of innocent people. Quote, we're monitoring everybody's communications instead of suspects' communications. That lack of focus has caused us to miss leads we should have had, end quote. This shows the ineffectiveness of mass surveillance and the dangers. Quote, surveillance menaces intellectual privacy and increases the risk of blackmail, coercion, and discrimination, end quote. This collecting of information will not help in the fight against terrorism and will cause increased danger and decreased security, costing the lives of innocent citizens. Quote, time and time again, we learn that informants... No, that's not right. Observation 3, the plan. Mandate. The government should be required to uphold the Fourth Amendment. Violators will be prosecuted. Agency, judicial system. Enforcement, prosecution. Funding. Taxes would not be raised. According to statistics, the cost for the government to find one terrorist with their current system is estimated at $14 billion. The funding which previously went to the costly and ineffective mass surveillance will be redirected to uphold the law and catch more criminals. Observation 4, advantages. Advantage A, the government will not be in charge of the people. This is how our country was intended to be. By removing the ability for the government to look into every aspect of citizens' lives, it will be less likely to become a dictatorship. By securing privacy, we prevent, quote, a government that wants to be all-seeing, all-knowing, and all-powerful, end quote. Cutting off the government's unwarranted surveillance of innocent citizens protects us because, quote, uncontrolled search and seizure is one of the first and most effective weapons in the arsenal of every arbitrary government, end quote. By refusing to give the people working for us uncontrolled access of all our personal information, we prevent a greedy, despotic government. Advantage B, safer for all. The threats caused by unwarranted surveillance, even when conducted with the welfare of citizens in mind, are far greater than the threats this spying is trying to prevent. Quote, even with the September 11th attacks included in the count, The number of Americans killed by international terrorism since the late 1960s, which is when the State Department began counting, is about the same as the total number of Americans killed over the same period by lightning, accident-causing deer, or allergic reaction to peanuts." End quote. Mass surveillance is highly dangerous, swamping law enforcement with useless information and costing lives. Quote, "Time and time again, we learn that informants filed reports with authorities, only to see those names end up on a never-ending list that, as journalists have shown, includes hundreds of thousands of innocent people." End quote. Unwarranted mass surveillance, even when conducted correctly with good intentions in mind, leads to more danger to the public, not less. The benefits of and dangers prevented by requiring warrants far outweigh the possible dangers of unseen data. Advantage C, personal freedom and liberty. By securing the privacy of citizens, we make them free to exercise their right to free speech unwatched. Also, this allows citizens to feel safe in their own homes, which is not something they currently are. Citizens do care about surveillance. Quote, 93% said that being in control of who can get information about them is important, according to a 2015 report. At the same time, a similarly large majority, 90%, said that controlling what information is collected about them is important. End quote. Citizens are not happy with the way information is being collected. Quote, 91% agree with the statement that consumers have lost control of how personal information is collected and used. End quote. Summary. Citizens won't live under the unpleasant, unsettling, and unconstitutional state of constant surveillance. They will no longer be afraid to exercise their right to free speech and will no longer have to worry about private information becoming public. Quote, in conclusion, quote, ultimately saying that you don't care about privacy because you have nothing to hide is no different from saying that you don't care about freedom of speech because you have nothing to say. Just because this or that freedom might not have meaning to you today doesn't mean that it doesn't or won't have meaning tomorrow to you or to your neighbor, end quote. Mass surveillance without a warrant violates the Fourth Amendment, opens doors to a despotic government, and endangers American citizens in many ways. This can be changed by prohibiting the U.S. federal government from collecting surveillance data on citizens without a warrant. Therefore, my partners and I urge the judge to vote for the resolution. Thank you. I am now ready for cross-examination.
Could we please take some prep time? And how much do we have?
12 minutes total.
Thank you.
Is the timer ready?
No. I am ready.
Is the judge ready?
Yes. Hold on 1 second, actually. I thought I was ready, but it's not giving me. Why is it not giving me the start button? Okay, I'm ready.
Can you repeat your first quote?
If you're a grown-up and you've been using the internet for maybe close to 20 years, Google alone has the equivalent to about 3 million pages of information about you.
And how is this first quote relevant to the topic of government surveillance?
Because it is what?
Teammates are allowed to answer.
Teammates are allowed to answer.
Mm-hmm.
It's relevant because it's showing how much information is actually able to be collected, and that this isn't there for a relevant issue, because there is a lot of information that's being collected.
Alright, and do you have qualifications for your sources?
All of them, yes.
Alright, and can you define, I don't know exactly how to say this, is it despoted or
She has it memorized, I'm assuming, right? You
I
used
don't-
it a lot.
A government which sort of serves itself instead of serving everybody else, and doesn't care or have to be held responsible to the opinions of, well, basically a dictatorship.
Alright, no further questions.
Does the negative team have the 1AC? Have a copy of the 1AC? Give the negative team a copy of the 1AC, please. Are you using more prep time?
Yes.
Tell the timer.
Alright. The negative team is ready.
That's all the prep time you needed?
Yes.
You got 12 minutes. You got a lot of it.
We were prepping before.
Okay.
Alright, hang on.
Is the timer ready?
No, alright, yes.
Is the judge ready?
Yes.
The affirmative team. Good morning. My partners, Ada Powers and Josiah Godek, and I, Andrew Sargent, are for the resolution that the U.S. federal government should be prohibited from collecting surveillance data on citizens without a warrant. The negative team accepts the affirmative team's definitions for all. Observation 2. Harm 1. There is no bodily injury. No one is bodily injured by the surveillance. Quote, when the government is performing surveillance over video, communication lines, or internet resources, there is no one being physically harmed by these activities. You can install trackers on a vehicle that might invade some of your privacy, but it will not attack your body. Because the goal of this work is to discover criminal activities, many people believe that the ends justify the means when it comes to keeping everyone safe. End quote. Natalie Roygal, source connectusfund.org. Harm 2. We are adapted to always being surveilled. Quote, we are rapidly entering the age of no privacy where everyone is open to surveillance at all times. When there are no secrets from the government. The government is already so involved in the lives of the people that a slight amount of surveillance won't affect anybody. End quote. William O. Douglas, source azquotes.com. Harm 3. Surveillance will reduce crime. As most everyone would agree, the NSA has no right to hack into your computer and retrieve your information. There are privacy laws in place that prohibit these types of searches. End quote. Carson Morey, sites.peu.edu. The negative team urged the judge to vote for our resolution. There's more? Sorry. Advantage 1. Quote, the usefulness of surveillance technology is preventing and solving crimes depends on the resources put into it. Our evolution of 3 cities found that the most active systems are monitored by trained staff, have enough cameras to detect crimes in progress, and integrate the technology into all manner of law enforcement activities. End quote. Nacy G. Site urban.org. Advantage 2. A Pew Research survey in 2011 found that only 29% favored the U.S. government monitoring personal telephone calls and emails in order to curb terrorism, but Pew is found in another poll that 47% are more concerned government politics, have not gone far enough to adequately protect the country, while only 32% said that they were more concerned that the government has gone too far. We are done and ready for cross-examination.
We need prep
Are we
time.
taking,
Yeah,
taking
we
prep
need
time?
prep time.
So, who's talking about people who would know?
Now remember, when they're asking Andrew questions, if he doesn't know the answer, you guys can volunteer an answer.
Training. It's got surveillance and stuff. We can just talk.
Feels so weird.
I know.
If you didn't hear it, you
We need the cone of silence, like in that old TV show, Get Smart. Have you ever seen that? No.
that won't train people with violent surveillance. Does it have anything to do with who is conducting the surveillance? This is awkward.
What is it?
You're gonna say we're off topic?
You said we were last because we used two sources from Google. That's not off topic. I don't think so.
Alright,
Is the timer ready?
not quite, I need to jot that down. Yes,
Is the judge ready?
yes.
Could you repeat the last quote?
Quote, the usefulness of surveillance technology is preventing and solving crimes depends on the resources put into it. Our evolution of 3 cities found the most effective systems are monitored by trained staff, have enough cameras to detect crimes in progress, and integrate the technology into all manner of law enforcement activities.
Could you also repeat the quote from Advantage A?
That was Advantage A.
How are the trained people, how are the trained people better at surveillance?
Trained people are typically better at surveillance than untrained people.
No further questions.
If you want to take more prep time, you may, just tell the timer.
Jason, prep time for 2 AC.
So this is their prep time?
Mhm. You don't need to fill that out in writing, that's just to help you.
Okay.
You can take notes there if it's helpful. Fiona, can you come here a second? 1 second. Fiona, are you guys coming upstairs and downstairs to try, Claire, it's you, not Fiona. Are you going upstairs and downstairs to try on costumes?
No, we're going back down to stay.
Okay, and no more people are gonna be coming through here?
Maybe Misty just get back down.
Okay, if anyone needs to go back downstairs, can they take them downstairs, because they're having to meet Claire?
We're at the 2AC, right?
That's
Yes.
where I, yeah, alright.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's what I see.
2AC, but it is the CX. What was that last one?
The cross, or,
This is 2AC.
Yeah.
okay.
So now, is the timer ready? Is the judge?
Hold on 1 second. Is there a question?
So usually ask,
The
is the judge
CX,
ready, then
I
it's the
just wanted to
timer
make
ready, and
sure
that
I
gives the timer a
clarified
second if we're like
was
moving
doing that.
quickly.
So it says it.
So Isabel will be doing the two, yeah, it's on, where's that list I gave you first, right here.
Oh, okay, there we go.
This isn't counting for your time, we'll restart the time, so hold on a second. So the cross,
Oh, that was that, okay, that was great, okay.
was Nicole,
Nicole did that.
did the crossing, right,
Okay.
Nicole there, and then Isabel there. Who's gonna do the cross for the other team, will be
That's perfect.
Ada, and then, okay, so Nicole, Isabel, then Ada will. do.
Okay, perfect, I just thought, oh, I didn't have anything there, and that's, now I remember that what was going on.
Okay, that's okay, it's hard,
No, that's perfect, thank you.
and it's not in the same order, and then Ada will cross again,
Okay,
and the two NC will be Josiah.
okay, perfect. Oh, that's what she's speaking.
Ada
Okay.
and Josiah, and then Nicole will cross.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, very good. That didn't count against anyone's time, we're just
Wait,
getting
are we
everybody
doing-
ready.
I have a question, are we doing cross for 2NC?
Yeah, we can go ahead and do it.
Is the judge ready?
Yes.
Is the timer? The negative team?
Yes.
Well, let's begin. Good morning. My partners Nicole Menendez and Jason Allison, and I, Isabel Horowitz, are for the resolution. Federal government should be prohibited from collecting surveillance data on citizens without a warrant. Quote, any society that will give up a little liberty to gain a little security will deserve neither and lose both. This is very applicable to this issue because the United States is currently ignoring the law that protects its liberty. They do this under the guise of gaining security. In reality, however, this puts us in more danger in many different ways, robbing us of both liberty and security. The negative team stated that there was no bodily injury caused by this mass surveillance. However, this is not true. Quote, after terrorist attacks in Boston and Manchester, which caused fatalities, authorities informed the public that they were aware of perpetrator months or even years before the violence occurred. Time and time again, we learned that informants filed reports with authorities only to see those names end up on a never-ending list that, as journalists have shown, includes hundreds of thousands of innocent people, unquote. This shows that there have been lives cost by this ineffective surveillance program. Quote, if we hadn't spent so much time on mass surveillance, if we followed the traditional models, we might have caught them. So it does cause bodily injury, it causes deaths. The negative team also said that people had adapted to surveillance, therefore making it alright. However, this is not a good thing, because the fact that people have adapted to having a government which knows everything about them is very bad. Quote, I'm sorry, 1 minute. Quote, the First and Fourth Amendments were passed in reaction to the authoritarian actions of the British Crown, which indiscriminately searched the homes and persons of American colonists in an effort to prevent political dissent. Getting used to this is not a good thing, because this is still a problem, even if people are getting used to it. And we also did say in our 1AC that polls have shown that people are not getting used to it and are not comfortable with the way that their surveillance data is being used. We're happy that you guys said that the NSA has no right to be surveilling people this way. We were happy that you agreed on that point. We are also happy that you agreed that there are laws in place preventing this from happening, and these laws are being ignored. The Fourth Amendment is that law. The Fourth Amendment is that law. And we still need to have more laws. There are people trying to pass these laws, but we still need to have another law to back up the Fourth Amendment. Quote, the Senate rejected by 1 vote a proposal to require the government to get a search warrant before it investigates people's digital history. In summary, these laws still haven't been passed. And the Fourth Amendment, the one law in place, is being ignored, which is just showing how unconstitutional this is. The usefulness of surveillance depends on resources, you guys said. And this is true that skilled people are better at surveillance. However, we're not cutting off skilled people from surveilling people. And we are not cutting off any surveillance except for that which is done on innocent American civilians without a warrant. You also said that there was a survey saying that only 29% favored surveillance, which kind of backs up the point that American citizens are not happy with the way that their data is being used. In conclusion, quote, they can use your computer video to look back at you, or they can monitor you within a certain distance of the keystrokes you're making on your computer, or what you're putting on your computer screen. If that's not enough, they can come through your firewall you think you have but don't, and go through your operating system you think protects you but doesn't, and read your encrypted email you thought was secure but isn't. Quote, if you are targeted, there's virtually nothing you can do. Anyone under this kind of surveillance is completely helpless. Alarmingly, this is how Americans are being watched right now. The threat from terrorism is nothing compared to the dangers of this ineffective way to stop it. This unlawful method of surveillance is a grave threat in many ways. Quote, among deprivations of rights, none is so effective as encountering the population, crushing the spirit of the individual and putting terror in every heart. The human personality deteriorates and dignity and self-reliance disappear, where homes, persons, and possessions are subject at any hour to unheralded search and seizure by the police. Therefore, my partners, Nicole Menendez, Jason Allison, and I, Isabel Horowitz, urge the judges to vote for the resolution. Thank you. I'm now ready for cross-examination.
All right, we would like to take some press time. You can continue back to this. And then okay, so district two.
Hello. Is the timer ready?
No.
Has
judge first.
Is the judge ready?
Yes.
Is the timer
I
ready?
could say no if you'd like.
Yes.
Okay. Alright. Can you repeat your first quote?
Yes, I can. Quote, any society that would give up a little liberty to gain a little security will deserve neither and lose both.
And can you agree that you had said this quote in your 1AC?
No, we did not.
Alright. Do you have any statistics for the
For which
for the unhappy citizens that you had
yes,
mentioned?
we do. We mentioned it in our 1AC as I mentioned. You mentioned some statistics saying that only 29% agreed with surveillance of the people being surveilled, and we also had some surveillance data in our Advantage C. Quote, the vast majority of Americans, 93%, said that being in control of who can get information about them is important. At the same time, similarly large majority, 90%, said that controlling what information is collected about them is important. 91% agreed with the statement that consumers have lost control of how personal information is used to collect.
And did you have a quote for the terrorism point that you made?
Which one? The point that people, that terrorism,
that surveillance caused a lot of people bodily harm at that point?
yes. I mentioned the quote, after terrorist attacks in Boston and Manchester, the authorities informed the public that they were aware of the perpetrator months or even years before the violence occurred. They could have prevented those, and those caused deaths, which is definitely bodily harm.
And would you agree, though, that it wasn't directly surveillance that harms the people?
It wasn't directly surveillance, but surveillance did nothing to prevent it, which is the only excuse for surveillance being there in the first place.
I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Are you gonna take some prep time?
Yes.
Who's taking this? See, it's
The negative team is taking prep time.
We were close. It was the second quote, wasn't it?
What?
I know you used one of the quotes in the 1AC. Was it the second one? Because the one that said thousands of people
No,
wrongly.
I don't know. I don't think I did mention a few.
Probably not. Guys, you can do that at the end.
Alright.
Probably
Where
not.
we
Does it
can
doesn't
remove
matter?
a little
It's still
bit.
valid evidence.
But next year they'll be like, what do you mean we can't jump
Okay,
into
okay,
each
stop,
other?
stop.
Right, right.
Okay, so it's scheduled. Starting with group reading.
It was Esther Littlefield that suggested we do that when we did our debate last year. Let them cover for their teammates
Oh.
because,
Surprised that she would do that.
well, because they're still learning and it gave them the opportunity to keep matching things, whereas otherwise things got lost in the abyss and they kind of lost the flow. So the idea was to keep the teams focused on the flow,
Yeah.
even if the official correct person wasn't the one.
Well, and even if they can't say it, gives them the opportunity maybe to move that to writing their thoughts so that later when they can do some
Right.
conversation
To keep
or counter.
to keep tracking the argument was the idea that Esther had suggested.
I think my own input would be like giving that person a little bit of time to think rather than immediately setting them.
That's true.
Right,
That's true.
like a little bit more balance, like a 30-second or
Pause.
But the problem with the pause is it's being timed, right? Yeah,
sure.
yeah, I hear you. And
There's
it's the
something
other
else
team's time.
Instead of being done.
It's being timed, but it's the other team's time on the
it's
cross. Yeah, so that counts on the other team's cross. Yeah,
Yeah.
Tricky.
I've
I don't
been
know.
noticing with the team policy on this that people aren't using the full time with crosses in. I don't know if that's a normal.
I don't know.
I suppose it can vary, but that's what I noticed.
Does 3 do team policy again?
They do, they're getting ready to do that. week 5 or something next semester. So I'll be up at real close. It's not awful, yeah. Libby and Reagan are paid, and Lauren, like 7 years with the Starbucks today, Lauren Thomas. So they're up at 2
Can I ask a question? Are we allowed to ask how much prep time we have left? Just
You
out of
may,
curiosity.
yes, go ahead.
Okay, how much prep time do we have left?
You need to put the question to Mrs. Powers.
I have a question,
Are you
how
guys
much-
done?
How much prep
Yes,
time do?
are you done? That's what
Yeah.
we're just making sure that because if you were explaining something, we didn't want to interrupt.
Oh,
Yes.
okay, so I'll give you.
Yes, we
what
ready
do you-
in 10
What do you
minutes, but
think,
we're
like
ready.
I think
30 seconds?
I think it's.
No, no, we're fine, 'cause this is our last,
Oh,
this is our
okay.
last thing, so this is the last thing we need for time on.
Alright.
And Isabel wants to know how much prep time her team has left.
You guys have 6 minutes and 88 seconds.
Okay, good morning. Is the judge ready?
Yes.
Is the timer ready? The affirmative. All right, let us begin. Good morning, my partners, Andrew Sargent and Ada Powers, and I, Josiah Godick, are against the resolution the U.S. federal government should be prohibited from collecting surveillance data on citizens without a warrant. Harm 1. Harm 1. No one is bodily injured. Quote, privacy as most Americans know it was forever changed by the September 11th terrorist attacks. 20 years since, Americans are still feeling the repercussions, particularly online. The Patriot Act, passed in 2001 and followed by additional legislation, gave authorities wide-ranging surveillance powers in exchange for giving up their privacy, and people would be better protected from the future terrorist attacks. The government promised. Harm 2. Surveillance will reduce crime. The nation against future terrorist attacks includes the following principles. Direct anti-terrorism efforts towards system-wide improvements, recognize the economic benefits of investment in domestic defense, keep privacy issues in perspective, focus technology procurement on speedy development and interoperability, and coordinate domestic defense research and development. Harm 3. People are adapted. Privacy is sort of like the deficit. In the abstract, the voters rate it as a serious concern, Mr. Hallman writes. But drill down and they don't want to cut the entitlements that balloon federal spending or end programs that have prevented terrorist attacks, especially if Americans don't believe their own computers and phones are being monitored. They are willing to give the government a long leash. In conclusion, we have proved that surveillance is necessary to keep society safe and operational. Therefore, my partners and I urge the judge to vote to reject the resolution the U.S. federal government should be prohibited from collecting surveillance data on citizens without a warrant. Narrative cross-examination.
This is their figure out what's going on one, and then they do it. One, knowing
They get to do it when they get done with.
they do one of each and two. Yeah.
You have 1 minute. Seconds.
Are you okay?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Is the judge ready?
Yes.
Is the timer ready?
This is the cross-exam, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Did you have any advantages if you didn't, we didn't hear, or if you did, we didn't hear?
We had already stated our advantages in our 1MC, so we did not see it fit to state them again.
Do you have any specific instances of surveillance saving anyone?
Do not have any specific instances, but I had a couple of broad quotes that covered them.
We had 5 points. Did you bring up any of those points?
What were your points?
It is unconstitutional, danger of dictatorship, the government will not be in charge of people, and personal freedom and liberty.
We were forwarding our own harms in our 2MC.
You didn't try to review our plan. Does that mean you didn't find any problems?
The plan was to, would you mind restating it, please?
The government should be required to uphold the Fourth Amendment. Violators will be prosecuted. Do you want to hear the?
So I believe we did a slight refutation in our 1MC.
Could you repeat that?
I believe we did have our first advantage, which slightly freezes that too. Would you like me to read that quote?
No. No further questions.